The meteorite streaked across the night sky, a bright ball of fire that caught Ty's attention as he fixed the broken fence at the edge of his wheat field. He paused, hammer in hand, watching as the object moved too slowly for a normal shooting star. It disappeared behind the distant line of trees that marked the boundary of his farm. Ty hesitated. It was already late, and he had an early morning ahead of him. But curiosity tugged at him, and he found himself walking toward the tree line, guided by the faint glow he could still see through the branches. The night was quiet except for the chirping of crickets and the soft crunch of soil beneath his worn boots. Ty's farm sat isolated on the plains, passed down through 3 generations of his family. Since his parents died 2 years ago, he had managed alone, struggling against poor harvests and mounting debts. As he approached the trees, the smell of burnt earth filled his nostrils. A thin trail of smoke rose from a small crater about 20 feet wide. But what lay in the center wasn't a rock from space. Instead, Ty found himself staring at a metallic pod, its surface cooling with soft hissing sounds. "That's not a meteorite," he whispered to himself, taking a cautious step closer. The object was clearly made of metal, with smooth edges and what looked like a sealed door on one side. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. Ty circled the pod, keeping his distance. He should call someone, the police or maybe the military. This was clearly not something he should be dealing with alone. He reached for the phone in his pocket when a loud crack split the air. The pod's surface split open, releasing a cloud of vapor that smelled like ozone. Ty stumbled backward, tripping over a root and falling to the ground. From his position, he watched in shock as the pod fully opened to reveal its contents. Inside lay a woman, or at least something that looked mostly like a woman. Her skin had a subtle blue sheen that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. What looked like delicate scales lined her temples and ran down the sides of her neck. Her hair was silver white, cut in a short, practical style. She wore a fitted suit made of material that seemed to shift colors when it caught the light. Most alarming, she appeared to be injured. A glowing blue substance, blood, seeped from a wound on her side. "Hello," Ty called out softly, his heart pounding. "Can you hear me?" The figure didn't respond. Ty looked around the empty field, then back at the unconscious woman. Whatever she was, she needed help, and there was no one else around for miles. With a deep breath, Ty made a decision. He carefully approached the pod, and after a moment's hesitation, reached in to lift the woman out. She was surprisingly light, her body cool to the touch. The blue substance from her wound stained his work shirt as he carried her back toward his farmhouse. Inside, Ty placed her on the couch and found his first aid kit. He wasn't sure if human medicine would help an alien, because that's what she had to be, but cleaning the wound seemed like a good start. When he returned to the living room, he found her eyes open, watching him. Her eyes were the most inhuman part of her. They were large, with vertical pupils like a cat's, and a deep purple color that seemed to shift in the light. "Please," she said in perfect but oddly accented English, "do not call your authorities." Ty dropped the first aid kit in shock. "You speak English?" "I learn languages quickly. It is a gift of my people." She tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Don't move," Ty said. "You're hurt." "Yes. They found me before I could reach safe orbit." She looked around the simple farmhouse with curious eyes. "This is Earth, North American continent." "Yes, Nebraska," Ty confirmed, still trying to process that he was talking to an alien on his couch. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" She took a deep breath. "I am Hannah, royal daughter of the stellar court. My home is—" She paused, making a sound that Ty couldn't possibly pronounce. "In your language, perhaps, the seventh light would be close." "Your royalty, like a princess. That is a suitable approximation." Hannah winced again as she shifted position. "My dynasty has fallen. My cousin Dai staged what you might call a coup. Those loyal to me were executed. I barely escaped." Ta carefully cleaned the strange glowing wound while she spoke. The blue substance didn't behave quite like blood. It was thicker and seemed to slowly absorb into her skin where it hadn't dried. There will be hunters following me, Hana continued. They cannot allow any legitimate heir to survive. Her eyes met Ta's, filled with a desperate plea. I beg shelter, just until I can heal and repair my ship. Ta should say no. He should call authorities, or at minimum, drive her to the next town and let her be someone else's problem. But something in her desperate eyes reminded him of his own loneliness since inheriting the isolated farm after his parents' death. How long do you need? He asked. Relief flooded her features. Perhaps 2 of your Earth weeks. From a hidden compartment in her strange clothing, she produced a small crystal that pulsed with inner light. I can offer payment. Ta stared at the crystal. It was roughly the size of an acorn, but seemed to contain swirling colors within its clear structure. This is a seed of the stars, Hana explained. It will transform your simple fields into something magnificent. It is a rare treasure among my people. I don't need payment, Ta said. I just want to make sure helping you won't put Earth in danger. Hana's expression softened. Your kindness is unexpected. The reports on humans were clearly incomplete. She placed the crystal in his palm. Take it anyway. Consider it a gesture between friends. As Ta's fingers closed around the crystal, he felt a slight tingling sensation. Something about this felt significant, as if his ordinary life had suddenly veered onto a path he could never have imagined. You can stay in the spare bedroom, he said, helping her to her feet. But we'll need to hide your ship if anyone sees it. I understand. Hana nodded. And Ta, thank you. Not many would show kindness to a stranger from the stars. As they walked slowly toward the bedroom, Ta wondered what exactly he had gotten himself into. Tomorrow, he would need to hide an alien spaceship, tend to an injured extraterrestrial princess, and somehow maintain the appearance of normal farm life if anyone came calling. His quiet life had just become far more complicated. Ta placed a plate of scrambled eggs on the kitchen table and watched as Hana examined the food with curious eyes. After 2 weeks of healing, her strange wound had closed, leaving only a faint blue line on her side. She picked up the fork awkwardly, still getting used to human utensils. You don't need to eat this, Ta said, remembering their conversation from yesterday. I can make something else. Hana shook her head. I wish to experience your customs. She carefully brought a small piece of egg to her mouth and tasted it. Her expression changed to one of surprise. So many chemicals and proteins. Interesting. Is it bad? Ta asked, sitting down with his own plate. Not bad. Just different. We process sustenance directly through skin membranes, she explained, running a hand over her slightly shimmering arm. Eating with the mouth is considered primitive among my people, though some enjoy it as a recreational activity. Ta nodded, still amazed that he was calmly having breakfast with an alien. The first few days after finding Hana had been tense. He'd hidden her ship under old tarps and hay in the back of his barn, and jumped at every distant sound of vehicles. But no one had come looking yet. Tell me more about your home, Ta said, genuinely curious. Hana's eyes seemed to look beyond the kitchen walls. Our system has 3 suns. My homeworld orbits the smallest, which gives off light in spectrums your eyes cannot see. She traced a pattern on the wooden table. Our cities float above the surface on energy fields, as the ground is too unstable for permanent structures. Like volcanoes? Ta asked. Similar, but with magnetic disruptions. She smiled at his interest. Our civilization spans 3 planets now, connected by travel gates, or at least it did before my cousin's coup. After breakfast, Ta took Hana to the greenhouse where he grew vegetables during the cold months. She moved carefully between the rows of plants, her fingers hovering just above the leaves without touching them. Your plants are so individual, she noted. On my world, plant life forms networks. One root system might span an entire continent. Ta showed her how to transplant tomato seedlings, demonstrating how to handle the delicate roots. Hannah watched intently before trying herself, her movements precise. "Your hands are good at creating," she observed as Ty fixed a broken shelf. "My people have machines for such tasks. Many have lost the ability to make things with their hands." "My father taught me," Ta said, hammering a nail into place. He believed a farmer should be able to fix anything on his land. That afternoon, they walked the boundary of Ta's property. The farm wasn't large by local standards, just 80 acres, with most dedicated to wheat and a small apple orchard that had been his mother's pride. The fresh air seemed to invigorate Hannah, whose steps became lighter as they walked. "Your gravity is stronger than I'm used to," she explained when Tad commented on her improved movement. "My body is adapting." At the edge of the wheat field, Hannah paused. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the plants. When Ta nodded, she closed her eyes and extended her hands toward the field. A subtle vibration passed through the wheat, making the stalks sway despite the lack of wind. "What did you do?" Tai asked, amazed. "Just feeling their energy patterns. Your crops are struggling with soil depletion in this section," she said matter-of-factly. "The crystal I gave you could help." They watched the sunset from Ta's porch swing, the sky painted in oranges and pinks. Hannah seemed transfixed by the colors. "Our sunsets are mostly in ultraviolet," she explained. "Beautiful to us, but you would see only faint blue." As darkness fell, Hannah demonstrated what she called residual energy manipulation. With a graceful motion of her hand, she caused small objects, a leaf, a pebble, Ta's empty coffee mug, to rise slightly from the porch floor and hover. "It's not magic," she explained, seeing his astonished expression. "Just physics your scientists haven't discovered yet." The sound of an approaching vehicle made them both tense. Headlights appeared on the long dirt road leading to the farm. "Quick, inside," Ta said, opening the door. Hannah slipped into the house and down to the cellar where they had prepared a hiding place. Tai tried to look casual as his neighbor Jin's truck pulled up. Jin was a good farmer but notorious for dropping by unannounced. "Evening, Ta," Jin called, stepping out of his truck. "Thought I'd bring you some of Sun's kimchi. She made too much again." He handed over a glass jar. "Thanks," Ta said, trying to sound normal. "How's everything?" Jin looked at him curiously. "You tell me. Haven't seen you in town for 2 weeks. Feed store folks were wondering if you'd left the country." Todd laughed, hoping it didn't sound as nervous as he felt. "Just busy with a new project, testing some different growing methods." Jin's eyes scanned the farm, noting the recently tilled section near the greenhouse. "You're different lately," he commented, eyeing the house suspiciously. "More secretive." "Just focused," Ta shrugged. "Dad always said I needed to innovate, or the farm wouldn't survive." After a few more minutes of uncomfortable small talk, Jin finally left. Ta waited until the truck's taillights disappeared before retrieving Hannah from the cellar. "Your friend is suspicious," Hannah observed. "This is dangerous for you, harboring me." "Jin's always suspicious," Tay reassured her, though he knew she was right. "He'll forget about it by next week." That night, they sat at the kitchen table where Hannah drew maps of her star system, explaining the complex political structures that had ultimately led to the coup. Her cousin Da had allied with outsiders who wanted access to their system's resources, betraying centuries of isolation that had protected their civilization. "What will you do when your ship is repaired?" Tai asked, not wanting to think about her leaving but knowing she couldn't stay forever. Hannah's fingers traced the edge of her drawing. "Find allies. There are resistance cells forming." Many did not accept Day's claim to the throne. She looked up at Ta. "I have no right to involve your world in our conflict." "But you already have," Ta said quietly. "At least, you've involved me." Later, as Ta lay in bed thinking about everything he'd learned, he heard soft music coming from Hannah's room. Strange, beautiful harmonies unlike anything he'd heard before. He realized she was singing in her native language. The sounds both alien and somehow deeply moving. In just 2 weeks, his world had expanded beyond the boundaries of Earth to include distant stars and civilizations. His simple farm had become home to a princess from another world, and his ordinary life now included discussions of interstellar politics and demonstrations of abilities that seemed like magic. Despite the danger, despite the complications, Ta couldn't remember when he had last felt so alive. Ta carefully dug a small hole in the rich soil of his greenhouse, just deep enough to hold the strange crystal Hannah had given him. For nearly a month, the alien princess had been living in his farmhouse, and they had finally decided it was time to plant her payment. Not too deep, Hannah advised, standing beside him. Her blue-tinged skin had taken on a healthier glow during her time on Earth. It needs to sense both soil and sunlight to activate. Tai placed the crystal in the hole. It pulsed once with inner light as soil covered it. Now what? We wait, Hannah said. But not long. The seed responds quickly to compatible environments. They closed the greenhouse for the night and returned to the house for dinner. Ta had been teaching Hannah to cook simple meals, which she approached with scientific precision, measuring ingredients to the exact gram. Tonight they made vegetable soup, and Hannah tried a small bowl, still experimenting with eating even though she didn't need to. Your neighbor Jin came by the feed store today, Ta mentioned as they ate. Asked me if I was running some kind of secret experiment. Said my truck's been at home too much lately. Hannah's expression grew concerned. People are noticing changes in your routine because of me. It's a small farming community. Everyone notices everything, Tai assured her. It doesn't mean they suspect anything unusual. Before dawn the next morning, Tai woke to a soft blue glow coming from outside. He threw on his clothes and rushed to the greenhouse. Inside, he found Hannah already there, watching in wonder as the planted crystal had transformed overnight. Where the small crystal had been buried now stood a translucent plant about 2 feet tall. Its stem was clear like glass but flexible, supporting leaves that looked like thin sheets of crystal. The whole plant pulsed with gentle blue light, casting shadows around the greenhouse. It works, Hannah whispered, her face lit by the plant's glow. I wasn't certain it would adapt to earth soil. What exactly is it? Tai asked, carefully reaching out to touch one of the crystal leaves. It felt cool and slightly vibrated under his fingertips. A catalyst, Hannah explained. It enhances other plants, creates symbiotic relationships with them. On my world, we use them to transform hostile environments. By nightfall, the crystal plant had doubled in size and sprouted dozens of thin tendrils that stretched toward the regular plants in the greenhouse. Where the tendrils touched Ta's tomato plants and herbs, the leaves began to take on a subtle shine. We need to transplant offshoots, Hannah instructed, showing Ta how to carefully cut small segments from the main crystal plant. Each piece will grow into a new catalyst. Over the next week, they worked together planting crystal offshoots throughout Ta's fields. Each day, the changes became more noticeable. His struggling wheat, which had been hit hard by drought the previous year, suddenly grew taller and thicker. The leaves took on a slight metallic sheen when they caught the sunlight. These enhance your earth plants, Hannah explained as they watched the transformation. Symbiotic relationship makes stronger. The apple trees in his small orchard, which normally wouldn't fruit until late summer, began producing blossoms, and then small apples at an astonishing rate. Ta picked one of the early apples and took a cautious bite. The flavor was incredibly sweet, with a complexity he had never tasted before. Is it safe to eat? He asked, already swallowing. Hannah nodded. The changes are beneficial. The plants retain their nature but become more perfect versions of themselves. By midsummer, just 6 weeks after planting the crystal seed, Ta's once struggling farm had transformed. His wheat stood a foot taller than any in the county, with heavy golden heads that promised a record harvest. The vegetable garden produced tomatoes twice their normal size, and perfect in color and taste. Even the soil itself seemed richer, darker, more alive. Word spread quickly through the farming community. Cars began to drive slowly past Ta's property, neighbors straining to see what miracle had occurred in his fields. "How are you doing this, Tai?" asked Sung, the owner of the local feed store, when Tai came to town for supplies. "Everyone's talking. Some say you've got secret chemicals. Others think you've sold out to some big agricultural corporation testing new GMOs." Tai tried to smile casually. "Just trying some new methods. Nothing special." But he could tell Sung didn't believe him. The change was too dramatic, too sudden to be explained by ordinary farming techniques. When Tai returned home, he found Hannah staring out the window at a black SUV driving slowly past the farm. "Government," she whispered, fear in her eyes. "Or worse, perhaps they found me." "It could be anyone," Ta said, trying to sound confident. "Probably just someone curious about the farm." But the SUV returned the next day, and this time it stopped at the end of the driveway. Two men in suits got out and took photographs of the fields from the road before driving away. That evening, Tai and Hannah walked through the wheat field. The plants now reached above Ta's shoulders, their stalks stronger than normal wheat. In the setting sun, the fields seemed to glow with health and vitality. "This is becoming too visible," Hannah said quietly. "Your Earth authorities will investigate unusual agricultural phenomena. It could lead them to me, to us." Tai touched one of the wheat stalks, feeling its unusual strength. "I never expected it to work so well. We could scale back, remove some of the crystal plants." Hannah shook her head. "The process has begun. The plants are already changed, and the soil too. Even if we removed all the crystal catalysts, your farm would still show unusual properties for years." As they walked back to the house, a neighbor's truck slowed on the road. The driver stared openly at Ta's fields, then at Ta himself, before speeding away. "They're afraid," Ta realized. "They don't understand what's happening here." That night, Tai checked his phone and found dozens of messages from other farmers, some curious, some accusatory. One message was from the County Agricultural Extension Office requesting an inspection of his farm, due to reports of unauthorized growing methods. While Hannah slept, Ta slipped out to the greenhouse where the original crystal plant had grown to fill nearly half the space. Its light pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat, and the air around it felt charged with energy. He noticed something unusual. Where his hand passed through the light, his skin momentarily took on the same subtle glow as Hannah's. He held his hand in the light longer, feeling the tingling sensation spread up his arm. It wasn't painful. If anything, it felt invigorating. Ta wondered if the plants were changing him too, just as they had changed his farm. When he finally went to bed, Ta dreamed of fields that stretched to the horizon, all pulsing with gentle light, and stars that seemed close enough to touch. In the dream, he and Hannah walked through the transformed landscape, no longer bound by the limits of their respective worlds. He woke to the sound of vehicles on his driveway, 3 of them, judging by the engines. Through the window, he saw the same black SUV from before, accompanied by 2 other official-looking vehicles. "Hannah," he called urgently. "We have visitors." Tai peered through the kitchen curtains at the 3 black vehicles parked in his driveway. Rain poured down, turning the dirt into mud and creating a gloomy atmosphere that matched the tension in the house. 3 men in dark suits stepped out, unfazed by the downpour. One held up a badge as they approached the front door. "Hide in the cellar," Ta whispered to Hannah. "Use the tunnel we prepared if you hear trouble." They had spent one afternoon digging a small escape passage from the cellar to the edge of the property, just in case this moment came. Hannah squeezed his hand before disappearing down the hallway. Her eyes, with their distinctive vertical pupils, showed both fear and determination. "Be careful." The knock at the door was loud and authoritative. Todd took a deep breath and opened it, trying to look like a simple farmer with nothing to hide. "Mr. Ta Kim?" the lead man asked, holding up a badge. "I'm Agent Park. These are my colleagues, Agents Lee and Moon. We're with the Agricultural Regulatory Department." Ta had never heard of such a department. "What can I help you with?" We've received reports of unusual crop growth and potential use of unauthorized biological agents, Agent Park said, his eyes scanning the interior of the house. May we come in? It's rather wet out here. Reluctantly, Ta stepped aside. The three men entered, leaving muddy footprints on the floor. They didn't look like agricultural inspectors. Their suits were too well-tailored, their posture too alert. We've also been tasked with investigating reports of a meteorite that landed in this area approximately 2 months ago, Agent Lee added, studying Ta's face carefully. Protocol requires investigation of any foreign material. I haven't seen any meteorite, Ta said truthfully. What had landed on his farm was definitely not a meteorite. Agent Moon wandered toward the living room, looking at family photos on the wall. You live alone, Mr. Kim. Yes, since my parents passed 2 years ago. Your crops look remarkably healthy, Agent Park commented, glancing toward the window that showed the fields beyond. Especially considering the drought conditions this region experienced earlier this summer. Good farming practices, Ta said with a shrug. My family has worked this land for generations. Agent Lee pulled out a small device that looked like a phone, but had unusual attachments. He waved it subtly around the room. Ta noticed a small light on it flashing more rapidly as it pointed toward the hallway, the direction of the cellar. We'd like to take samples from your fields, Agent Park said. Standard procedure for our investigation. Of course, Ta agreed, hoping to get them outside and away from the house. I can show you around. The 4 men walked through the rain to the wheat fields. Ta felt increasingly uneasy as the agents took samples, their movements too precise for ordinary government workers. Agent Lee continued to use the strange device, which now blinked rapidly near the crystal-enhanced plants. Interesting energy signature, he muttered to Agent Park, who nodded almost imperceptibly. After 30 minutes of collecting samples and asking pointed questions about Ta's farming methods, they returned to the vehicles. Agent Park handed Tai a business card. We'll be in touch, Mr. Kim. Please don't leave the area. His eyes were cold as he added, we might need to conduct a more thorough inspection of your property. As the vehicles drove away, Tai rushed back to the house. Hannah emerged from the cellar, her face pale. They're not from your government, she said urgently. The devices they carried are scanners for non-Earth technology. They're hunters from my world, disguised as your officials. Tai's heart sank. They know you're here. They suspect. The crystal plants give off energy signatures they can detect. She paced the kitchen nervously. They'll return with equipment to capture me. My cousin wants no legitimate heirs alive. That night, Ta packed his old pickup truck with essential supplies, food, water, clothes, and samples of the crystal plants, carefully wrapped in wet cloth. Hannah gathered her few possessions and the small communication device she'd salvaged from her ship. We need to take some of your wheat seeds too, she insisted. The hybridization process is already changing them. They could be important. Just before dawn, they fled the farm, driving north toward the mountains where Ta's grandfather had owned a small hunting cabin. Few people knew about it, and it hadn't been used in years. They took back roads, avoiding main highways where cameras might spot them. During the long drive, Tai noticed something strange. The normal fatigue of driving for hours didn't come. His eyes felt sharper, able to see details in the pre-dawn darkness that should have been invisible. Something's happening to me, he said, looking at his hands on the steering wheel. In the dim light, he could see a faint, subtle glow beneath his skin, similar to Hannah's but much fainter. I feel different. Hannah studied him carefully. The plants, she explained. Their energy transfers to compatible life forms. You've spent weeks handling them, eating their produce. You are changing, Ta. They reached the cabin by midday. It was small and dusty from disuse, but secure and hidden among dense pine trees. As Tai unloaded their supplies, he realized he could carry more weight than usual and move with unusual quickness. That evening, standing outside the cabin, Ta heard a vehicle on the mountain road, over 2 miles away, according to Hannah's surprised calculation, when the truck finally appeared 20 minutes later. His senses were sharpening beyond normal human capacity. On their third day in hiding, Tai woke suddenly in the night. Something had disturbed him, a sound too faint for normal ears. He gently woke Hannah. "Someone's coming," he whispered. "Multiple people, moving through the trees." Hannah's eyes widened. "How can you tell?" "I can hear them. Smell them too." The realization shocked him, like metal and something burning. They quickly gathered their most important supplies. Through the window, Tai spotted movement, dark figures approaching through the forest. The moonlight reflected off something metallic in their hands. "Back door," Ta whispered, leading Hannah out into the forest behind the cabin. As they moved through the trees, Tai was amazed at how clearly he could see in the darkness. Each rock, root, and branch seemed outlined in faint light. He guided Hannah confidently, avoiding obstacles that should have been invisible in the night. A shout came from behind them. They'd been spotted. Todd pulled Hannah toward a ravine he remembered from childhood explorations with his grandfather. As they ran, he discovered he could move faster than ever before, easily leaping over fallen logs and wide gaps between rocks. The hunters followed, their movements equally quick and precise, confirming they weren't human. One fired a weapon that sent a pulse of energy into a nearby tree, splintering it instantly. "Down here," Ta hissed, sliding into a narrow cave entrance partially hidden by bushes. The small space led to an underground stream his grandfather had shown him years ago. As they crouched in the darkness, Hannah gripped his arm. "I didn't just give you payment," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I gave you evolution. The crystal catalyst awakens dormant genetic potential. On my world, we use it to adapt to new environments." Ta let this sink in as he listened to the hunters moving above them. Searching, he wasn't just experiencing temporary changes. He was becoming something different, something more than human. "Can you swim?" he asked Hannah, pointing to the dark water flowing through the cave. She nodded, and together they slipped into the cold current, letting it carry them away from the hunters and toward an uncertain future. The underground stream carried Ta and Hannah for nearly a mile before they found a place to climb out. They emerged in a small clearing, soaking wet but safe for the moment. Ta could still hear perfectly. No sounds of pursuit reached his enhanced ears. "We need to find help," Hannah said, wringing water from her silver-white hair. "Someone who will understand what we're facing." Ta nodded, thinking quickly. "Professor Kim. He works at the university in the city. My father once took me to one of his lectures about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Everyone thought he was crazy, but he might believe us." They walked through the forest until they reached a small town. Ta used a payphone to call the university, carefully keeping his voice steady as he asked to leave a message for Professor Kim. He gave no names, just a meeting place and time. 2 days later, they sat in a quiet corner of a busy coffee shop near the university. Ta spotted the professor immediately, a small man with wild gray hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. He approached their table cautiously. "You left a rather mysterious message," Professor Kim said, sitting down. "Something about evidence of non-Earth biology." Ta glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "Professor, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible." For the next 20 minutes, Ta quietly explained while the professor listened without interruption. When Tai finished, Professor Kim looked at Hannah with academic curiosity rather than disbelief. "May I?" he asked, reaching toward her hand. Hannah nodded, allowing him to touch her skin with its subtle blue sheen. The professor's eyes widened. "Remarkable. And you say your DNA is being altered as well?" he asked Ta. "I can see in the dark, hear things from impossible distances. My strength has increased." Ta demonstrated by effortlessly bending a metal spoon under the table. Professor Kim leaned forward. "I have a private lab, a few colleagues who think like me. Would you allow us to run some tests?" The professor's lab was hidden in the basement of the science building. His small team, 3 other scientists who had been ridiculed for their belief in extraterrestrial life welcomed Ta and Hana with amazement rather than fear. "Your species has potential unseen in our galaxy," Hana told the assembled group as they ran tests on both her and Ta. "With the right catalyst, humans could surpass even the stellar." Test results confirmed what Ta already felt. His DNA was restructuring, optimizing itself beyond normal human limitations. His cells showed increased efficiency in energy use, enhanced resistance to damage, and improved regeneration. "Not mutation," Professor Kim explained excitedly to his colleagues. "It's like his genetic code is fulfilling a blueprint that was always there. As if humans were designed with dormant abilities awaiting activation." Over the next few weeks, they worked together in secret. Ta's transformation continued, with his strength and senses improving daily. The crystal plant samples they had brought were cultivated in the lab, yielding astonishing results when exposed to various earth plants and animals. "The hunters will keep searching," Hana warned one evening as they reviewed their progress. "And they'll call for reinforcements. We need a plan that protects Earth while exposing my cousin's treachery." Professor Kim had been studying the communication device from Hana's ship. "If we could broadcast evidence of your presence and Ta's transformation to the world, it would be impossible for the hunters to operate in secret." "But wouldn't that cause panic?" asked Zhu, one of the professor's colleagues. "Not if we control the narrative," Ta suggested. "Show that Hana came in peace, that the changes happening to me are beneficial. Make first contact on our terms." Using the professor's equipment and Hana's knowledge, they modified Earth broadcast technology to reach scientific communities worldwide. They prepared evidence, videos of Hana demonstrating her abilities, data on Ta's transformation, and documentation of the hunter's presence on Earth. 3 days before their planned broadcast, disaster struck. The hunters raided the university lab. Ta sensed them coming minutes before they arrived, allowing the team to escape with their essential data and equipment. But the attack confirmed that time was running out. They retreated to an abandoned radio station in the mountains that Professor Kim had used for astronomical research years earlier. The old equipment was dusty but functional, especially after Hana modified it with parts from her salvaged communication device. "When we broadcast, they'll find us immediately," Hana warned as they made final preparations. "We'll have minutes at most." Ta nodded, feeling strangely calm. The changes in his body had reached a new level. His skin now had a subtle glow visible in darkness, and his reflexes were so fast he could catch a fly mid-flight. More importantly, he could feel a connection to the energy that flowed through all living things, the same energy that powered Hana's abilities. "I'm ready," he said, taking position before the camera. The broadcast began, reaching satellites and then bouncing to receivers worldwide. Ta spoke directly to camera, his story simple but powerful. Hana demonstrated her alien nature while explaining her peaceful intentions. Professor Kim presented the scientific evidence of Earth's first verified contact with extraterrestrial life. Most importantly, they revealed the presence of hostile hunters on Earth, disguised as government agents, and explained the broader galactic conflict that had brought Hana to their world. "Humanity stands at a threshold," Ta said toward the end of the broadcast. "We are not alone in the universe, and we are more than we believe ourselves to be." To prove his point, Ta demonstrated his evolved abilities, lifting objects that should have been impossible for a human to move, moving with blurring speed, and finally, showing how he could now manipulate energy in ways similar to Hana, causing small objects to float and lights to flicker with a gesture. "This is not the end of humanity, but its next chapter," he concluded. "The stars are not our limit. They are our birthright." As expected, the hunters traced their signal. Vehicles approached the station just as they finished broadcasting. But Tai was ready. The energy manipulation abilities he had developed allowed him to disrupt the hunters' weapons, giving them time to escape. 6 months later, Earth's first interstellar delegation prepared for departure. Using the combined knowledge of Hana, Professor Kim's team, and the data from the crystal plants, they had constructed a small craft capable of reaching nearby star systems. The ship's core was powered by the energy from evolved plants, now being cultivated in secure facilities worldwide. In the aftermath of the broadcast, governments had been forced to acknowledge the reality of extraterrestrial contact. Hannah's presence became official, and she helped establish diplomatic protocols for future interactions with other species. Tai, now physically transformed beyond ordinary human limits, stood beside Hannah at the command console of their new ship. His former life as a struggling farmer seemed distant, though he had made sure his land was preserved as the first site of alien-human cooperation. "My people thought Earth was a primitive outpost," Hannah said, watching their home planet recede beneath them as the ship rose into the atmosphere. "They never understood that sometimes the most powerful forces in the universe just need the right conditions to awaken." Tai smiled, feeling the cosmic energy flow through his transformed body. The ship accelerated, breaking free of Earth's gravity as they set course for the stars where Hannah's allies waited. Their mission: to build a coalition that could stand against her cousin's regime while protecting Earth from becoming a battleground. Humanity's next chapter was just beginning, and Ta, no longer just a farm boy but something new, would help write it among the stars.